Del Rio, Texas, home of Lake Amistad. Your host, Rob Wade. Two guys who dive. This episode of Two Guys Who Dive, live Saturday, 30 May 2015, episode 137. Enough already. Welcome, everybody, once again to another exciting episode of Two Guys Who Dive, and I am your host, Rob Wade, and I'm still without a co-host, so we are still looking for somebody to join us here. Obviously, it needs to be somebody who's a diver, but you don't have to be an experienced diver. You can be a brand new diver for all I care, but just somebody who is actually actively diving to some extent and just has opinions about things, and you don't live under a rock. It's very easy to do. Just sit down and talk, put on a pair of headphones, talk on the microphone, we chat, we share things with the audience, and just have generally a good time. If you're new to the show, even though it's called Two Guys Who Dive, currently one guy who dives, we do focus on diving, but we talk about a number of other things. We do talk about local interest, national interest, even international interest, technology, a number of things, and basically just things that we want to talk about. So it's really easy to do because most people have opinions on different things and have different things in their life they're active about. And I'm getting accosted by one of our fur kids. I don't actually have room for any more up here. Say hi to everybody. No? No. This is Greza, our only red dachshund. I've got behind me Vala and Ronan, who are... There's only room... there's only room for me in this chair, but our dogs have decided that they'd like to share the chair with me. So whenever I'm sitting here, usually one or more will come over trying to get up and sit behind me. They've just got to be near Daddy. So, and it's first come, first served. So today, Vala and Ronan got first shot, and Grace is trying to get attention, but have to sit her. Maybe I'll put her in the co-host chair. Here you go. Now if we bring it over here, then it's almost like she's sitting in my lap. Okay, so it's going to look funny on the screen, but who cares? So anyway, title of the episode today is Enough Already, because, as I'll share with you in a little bit, we have had enough rain. I'm so sick and tired of rain in our area. And we'll be talking about more of the effects of that and showing you some examples of the effects of that a little bit later. So first up, let's hit a couple of segments that we always hit right off the bat. And the first one is movie review. Now, I shared with folks the last episode, which, oh, by the way, you'll note that we didn't have an episode last weekend. We're just finishing up renovations, and she wants to. We're just finishing up kitchen renovations in our house, so it's really taken a lot of our time, as well as at some points we had to turn on and off the electricity to outlets to facilitate such things as drywall work, and in some cases replacing of really, really old, outdated, dilapidated, nearly disintegrating wall plugs. And then other work as the contractors finish up. And it just so happens that the one wall here in the studio is shared with the wall. It's the same wall as the kitchen on the other side. So electricity running there also affects things like our servers, etc. So that kind of puts the kibosh on being able to do the show effectively. So anyway, but we are near the tail end of that. Hallelujah. It's been a much more expensive venture than we planned, but we're definitely satisfied with the results. I have couple of interesting little stories to share with you as a result of that a little bit later. So anyway, movie reviews. You may remember last show that one of the movies that we were expecting to go see and hence give you a review on was Tomorrowland. Well, we just haven't had time to see it, and it sounds like probably it was a good thing because most of the people whose opinions I respect, as well as the general public, it's really tanking in the box office. Apparently, the plot is really weak, and it seems to be all over the place. And of course, I've made no bones about the fact that I cannot stand George Clooney, and I was going to go see it in spite of that because the idea seemed intriguing. Now, clearly, Tomorrowland is a movie based. It's a Disney movie. Clearly, it's based on the Disney World. The Epcot Center and things like that. This has been part of their theme park genre for a while. So it's a case of finally making a movie about it. So the movie apparently is kind of all over the place, and my conservative friends have noted that the movie's clearly a George Clooney / liberal propaganda movie about global warming and all this garbage. So my interest in seeing it has waned considerably. Still might see it if we get caught up on a lot of things and get bored. We may just wait for it to come out on video. Who knows? Let's see. So we did go see Mad Max Fury Road. This movie, in the trailers didn't seem to just do a good job of describing where this movie fit in the series. Most of us my age have grown up. We've seen Mad Max 2, and we've seen all of the series. The original Mad Max, of course, as did all the sequels, starred Mel Gibson. But interestingly, in the first movie, his voice was dubbed. I'm not sure why. Maybe because of his accent was pretty heavy at the time. I don't know, but it's an interesting thing to note. That's not his voice in the original movie. So anyway, I wasn't sure what to expect going in to see Mad Max Fury Road. It seems to be a movie that fits between the first and the second, or possibly the second and the third. Just based on what he was wearing and things. Because he's basically still had the car from the first two movies, I think. He still had the policeman's jacket because he was a cop in the original as the movie series started. So, and he was having flashbacks about his wife and daughter who were killed by these criminals, outlaws, however you want to describe them. So this seemed to take place before, at least before Thunderdome. But anyway, what frustrated me a little bit about this movie is it seemed to be as much about Charlize Theron's character as much as it was Max. And so, okay, I get it. You know, Charlize Theron is attractive. She's a good actress. And she definitely was, you know, the brooding type of character that was necessary for this movie. She did a good job with it. But it just kind of frustrated me that the Mad Max character was almost secondary in the story. And then an interesting ending. I don't know if it was meant to leave it open for a sequel, prequel, or if it was meant to feed into what, just say, okay, we're passing the baton back to the original series of movies because this is an in-between movie. But, okay, so it was I have to say it was filmed much more like the first two movies than the Thunderdome. So it had the same kind of feel, some of the crazy camera work, crazy editing. The visuals were, of course, much more impressive because the technology today allowed them to do some more things about a scorched earth, you know, and wild weather created by devastation of society, blah, blah, blah. So it was pretty impressive visually. A little slow in bits, generally well edited. If you were a fan of the original movies, you probably thought this was a pretty good carrying on of that. I would give it a 7. Mostly because, you know, it's the typical violent. It just the storyline wasn't as deep as I was hoping for, and I'm be honest with you, I'm biased toward Mel Gibson in the character. So I was obviously, if this was going to be an in-between movie, they had to have somebody that was at least young enough to be that part, and so the actor they got for it did a good job, but it was he's a little too feral. I think his character was played a little too feral for me, given where it's placed in the movie, or in the series, the timeline, I guess. So, if you can stomach the violence and the language, and you like the Mad Max movies, this does a pretty good job of carrying on the baton. So, I'll give it a 7. Technology news. Okay, so I've made no bones about the fact that I am testing Windows 10 both on the desktop. I've got a test machine over here, and on a Lumia 635. The desktop version / tablet version is further ahead in development than the phone version, and they just released a new build number 10,130 or 10130. And while it's mostly tweaks, as you can tell, they claim they're going to make a July release to manufacturing, when they're basically going to say, this is the version we're going to release to the manufacturers to start loading onto machines that you would buy. Doesn't by any means mean that it's finished. It just means that they've reached a point where it makes no sense for them to keep doing this, that, and the other adjustments, tweaks, features. So, you know, before it goes, before people can sell, companies can sell, OEMs can sell machines. So they'll keep adding things later. But right now they're working out all the bugs, and they are tweaking a few little user experience interface things. They've heard some of the complaints, I guess, from those of us who really like Windows 8. We like the start screen, etc. So they've tried to make what they call the tablet mode / continuum satisfy some of those things. And the latest version does a couple of things, but the bottom line is, if you really like Windows 8, you're probably not going to be satisfied with this. The tablet experience is still horrible. The whole start screen aspect, the full screen tablet mode that I prefer, is merely a facade. It really doesn't work anything like Windows 8. It is a superficial approach to handling apps, arrangement of apps, compared to what Windows 8 does. One of the big complaints I had about Windows 10 is that when you go full screen with the start, to try to get something analogous to the real start screen in Windows 8, which is awesome, you've got this ridiculously annoying panel on the left that had File Explorer, unnecessary, had settings, unnecessary, had recent programs, again, unnecessary. A whole bunch of stuff that I don't use. I don't find useful at all. It makes no sense to me why they were there. And certainly being able to turn those off was something I absolutely insisted on. Well, they finally made that the case, and they moved, but they still have the stupid hamburger button. They've gone wholeheartedly into the Android, iOS hamburger button, and it's stupid. They could have just used the ellipsis in place instead of that, and kept that where it's easy to use. But no, Microsoft has gone stupid, run by a stupid idiot as their CEO, and they're listening to people who just want to ruin their operating system. So anyway, they've pared down, or given you the option to pare down that left panel. The all apps is still, their excuse for all apps is still a button there, which you kind of have to have it. And they've added a jump list, but you still get nothing but an endless scrolling vertical scroll of the list. On Windows 8, you had, when you flipped up the start screen, you saw all apps, and they filled up the screen, and you could sort them by recently added, by name, by category. You could sort them a number of ways, and your jump list still worked. But now you get a jump list, but all that does is take you, let's say you have 15 apps or programs that are in the S. Okay, well, you still have to scroll through them to see them, so it doesn't really gain you much. The jump list was merely throwing us a bone, but the problem is it needs to be able, when we click on all apps, which it shouldn't be a click, we should be able to simply sweep, but it should show it full screen so we can really see everything that's out there and sort it the way we want. I hope that at some point that they fix that, but they probably won't because they're being stupid about Windows 10. Let's see. When you have the tablet and full screen start configured, and you exit an app, this is really annoying to me because I hate being forced to see the desktop at all. The only time I ever want to see the old Windows 7 desktop, which is exactly what you get now with Windows 10, the only time I ever want to see that is if I have a legacy program running. You know, if it legitimately has to run on the desktop, fine. But I much prefer the immersive app experience of Metro apps. But so what an interesting and annoying thing now that's happening is if you're using the full screen start tablet mode and you exit an app, it momentarily shows you a blank desktop, or I guess it would show you a desktop with whatever you have on your desktop. I keep mine completely pristine. I don't put anything on the desktop. It's blank. But it shows you the desktop, and then it draws the start screen, which is annoying. It's a waste of time. I'm like, just take me straight to the start screen. Don't have that problem in Windows 8, but clearly they still have a bunch of issues with Windows 10. It is nowhere near ready for prime time. And it's still slow as molasses. I know they say they're trying to make under the hood improvements, but this test machine ran Windows 8.1 many times faster than this bloated behemoth mess of Windows 8 or Windows 10. So all I can say is if you're going to run Windows 10, it needs to be on brand new hardware. Brand new high-powered hardware. I don't recommend running it on a machine that's 2 years old. Not at all. I got a quad-core processor with 4 gigs of memory, and that thing ran Windows 8.1 screaming, smoking, and it just is slow to do everything on Windows 10. Let's see. Oh, they're trying to tweak some more things about the start screen how you add tiles. Well, the way live tiles are added and adjusted for size on Windows 8, it's a horizontal scrolling screen, which makes sense to me because how do you typically use it on a desktop PC? Your screens are wide, as you can see here. So being able to scroll left and right to see the tiles makes sense. On a phone, makes sense to go vertically. But on a computer, on a PC, or even a tablet, the way most people use tablets, it makes sense to go left and right. So what they've done is it's vertical as well. So you get 3 columns of you get 3 columns of groups, I guess, if you will, of tiles that you can put, and then those tiles can have the most you can have is 3 medium-sized tiles. Of course, you have different tile sizes. You have a large one, so that would take up the equivalent 2, and so you could have a medium, or you could have a wide and a medium. So you get 3 groups of that across the screen, and you can't go any further than that. But you can layer them below, so all you can do is scroll up and down with that. And so it is painful. It is very, very painful, and it doesn't make sense to me. But that is where they are going with Windows 10 at this point. What's funny? Oh, and then one other thing that I've noticed that just gets even more annoying is settings. Finding settings on any given app, whether it's a Microsoft native app or a third-party app or a feature inside of Windows, a setting inside of Windows. You have to look for where settings are. On Windows 8, you could always count on it being on the left panel. You just bring up the charms and there's settings. Whatever program you're working on, the settings focused on that. It was context sensitive. So you had no issue. You always knew where the settings were. You always knew how to bring up the settings for a given app. But unfortunately, you have to go looking for it all over the place in Windows 10 because it's not consistent. Matter of fact, nothing is consistent in where things are located in Windows 10. And it's very frustrating. I could always count on things where I could find stuff in Windows 8, but you can't in Windows 10. It is chaotic and all over the place. So that's where it's going. But I know people who feel the same way I do, who really liked Windows 8 and really are disappointed with, disgusted with where Windows 10 is going. Others who absolutely love Windows 10 because they absolutely are tied to Windows 7 have kept telling us, oh, well, it's, you quit complaining about an operating system that's still in beta. I'm like, yes, we understand it's in beta. The parts that are clearly bugs because they're broken or otherwise not fully completed. I get that. I've beta tested for decades. Okay. So I understand what it means that features, aspects are not fully ready to go. What we're talking about is actual design choices. The choice by the folks at Microsoft to make the operating system be a certain way, move a certain way, customers to interface with it, interact with it a certain way. Those are the things we have an issue with. We're looking past the bugs. We get that there are going to be bugs. A bug is when you click on a live tile and it doesn't open fully to the program. You know it's supposed to, you know it's meant to, but it doesn't fully open to the program. Or you're trying to exit a program by dragging it off the screen and it kind of jitters in front and then stays open. That's a bug. But the idea that it's supposed to drag off the screen to exit the program, that's a feature. That is a user experience. The choice of putting settings all over the place, not being being consistent with where the settings options are for a program, those are design choices. If settings didn't actually work properly, or you clicked on settings and it only showed you some basic setting options, those are things that we know that's part of the development. It's in development. But not knowing where the settings actually are because you have to look all over the screen for it, that's a design choice. Those are the things that we're complaining about. Let me see if there's anybody in the chat room. I see. Hey, I see John's in there, and I see somebody else. Somebody's reacting. What? That's your opinion. Yes, you're right. It's my opinion, and so I'm expressing my opinion because it's my show. You're free to share your opinion. I will definitely share that with the folks out there if it's rated G. But that's okay. That's the thing. Everybody has their things that they like. I've grown up with the Microsoft operating systems. I also started out working with Apple stuff too, and I quickly learned that I don't like Apple at all. But I basically lived through all of the DOS versions and all of the Windows versions, with the exception of Windows ME. That seemed like a toy operating system to me. It didn't work for me. But all the other versions I've used. Some things I've liked about them, some things I haven't, but generally I've gone with the flow. Moving into a touch world, even though I didn't even have a touch device yet, when Windows 8 first started coming out as a developer preview, I said, okay, I'm going to test it out because I love the Windows Phone. Absolutely the best operating system. Windows Phone 7, I loved. Windows Phone 8 actually took features away from Windows 7 instead of improving them, but they had to do that because they were trying to move toward a integrated ecosystem. So I get that, but unfortunately they lost some of the key features that were great about Windows Phone. But I accepted those changes as those were choices. They weren't bugs. They were choices by Microsoft, but I was able to swallow those even though I vehemently disagreed with them. But it didn't destroy the operating system for me. When Windows 8 came out, I followed the whole developer preview to release preview all the way and saw it through its bugs, tweaking of features, addition of features, etc. And I fully embraced it. That's all we use. I love the direction that was going. And then all the people who absolutely they're like the XP users, they were tied to Windows 7. They couldn't understand Windows 8. And they pushed, because they outnumbered those of us who embraced Windows 8, they pushed Microsoft to basically go backwards and go back to Windows 7 and then kind of layer in, as throw a bone to those of us who liked Windows 8, to layer in facade pieces of Windows 8 into the operating system. So, yeah, I'm very opinionated about it because I still believe that Windows 8 was the better progression point. Windows 10 is not. It is basically going backwards with an homage to Windows 8. And I will rant to my dying day against everybody who had influence to do that. And Satya Nadella is my enemy. I wish they'd get rid of that guy. But that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion, and this is the tech that I use, the tech that I love, and then there's tech that I hate. And Windows 10 is tech that I hate. But I'm testing it, so I have a valid point from which to actually comment, because I don't have much respect for people who have opinions about something that they've not at least tried. I don't like escargot. I've tried escargot, and I don't like it. You won't hear me say I don't like something like a food that I haven't tried yet. So I don't like Windows 10. They're trying to make some facade changes to help it, but so far they ain't even come close to hitting the mark. So, and it's going to be coming out in July, so we'll see what happens. Let me see. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about renovations. We were getting our kitchen redone. We thought we were budgeted well for this, and let me tell you, you never assume that you've covered all the bases unless you've already done this before and you're aware of the pitfalls of the buys the ways kind of thing. So when we were tearing out the old cabinetry, etc., you discover things that the previous owners did to the walls, electrical, it's in the pipes, etc., that you find yourself going, why? What in the world were they thinking? And so that increases the expense sets up delays, because now you have to fix those things before the new folks come in and do what they need to do. So that added cha-ching to the end time to our project, and of course impacted a number of things in our life. But Then there's the issue of communication. It's important to communicate some things. We discover we're in Del Rio, Texas. There is a heavy Hispanic population here. And again, before any of you jump up and down, this is not a ethnic complaint. This is simply a statement of how things are when you live in the border and you have to accept certain things. There are plenty of people here who do not speak English. In my perfect world, in my perfect United States, it would be a requirement. We would actually have English as the national language, and you would be required to be at least somewhat conversant in English in order to do business in this country. But we don't have that yet for whatever reason. I don't agree with the whatever reasons, but it is what it is. Okay, so I kind of have to accept that. So here we are. I'm certainly not going to say I won't do business with you if you can't speak English. I'll try to find somebody who can speak Spanish, and I did. I had a contractor who was a good friend of mine who's Hispanic, and he's very fluent in both languages. So worked with him. He recommended some great people. Couldn't understand a word they said, but they were excellent. They did excellent work. The results are, let's put it this way, for a lot less price, for a lot better quality, for a lot faster time than Home Depot would have done it. These folks did an awesome job, and I've been anybody who we've shown pictures of the work to. We've recommended these folks for doing the work. So I'm all about free enterprise, capitalism, helping people make money when they do a good job. But the language barrier creates some issues, and so there were a few misunderstandings. When they pulled out the old stuff, they ended up leaving with our perfectly fine, not that old garbage disposal and our range vent hood. So we're having to replace both of those. We've already replaced the garbage disposal, but we also have to replace the vent hood. So these are additional expenses that we were not planning on. Then came the part of, they finished their work. It looked great. Then came the work of putting on the granite tops, countertops, and the backsplash. Well, the way our kitchen is mostly an L shape, okay? The side where the dishwasher and the sink are, that's the side that I wanted the backsplash. And then there was a little section on the opposite wall, not the L, but the opposite wall where our stove is, that I wanted a backsplash as well. But the L side that didn't have a sink or anything, just cabinets and countertop, I didn't want a backsplash. I just wanted the wall. And we said that several times. We tried to make that clear with the folks that a local tile and carpet company. We made that clear multiple times. That's what we wanted. Unfortunately, and then of course we paid everything. And so then they come in, and they have backsplash to cover everything. And unfortunately, by the time I got there to make sure they understood what was going on, they'd already started the prep work for the backsplash on the section that I didn't want backsplash. And I said, I don't think we paid for all that backsplash. We just wanted it on this wall and the little section by our stove. No, as it turns out, one of the reasons why our cost went so much higher is they did actually include the cost for the backsplash the whole way around. So I didn't want to waste any more time, because then they would have to come in and fix the wall in the area where we didn't want the backsplash. So since we already were paying for it, we already paid for it, we just went ahead and had them put the rest of the backsplash up. It's not what I wanted. It looks different than my than I envisioned, but they did an excellent job. So as far as the quality of the work, it looks excellent. It just doesn't look the way I intended. So the last thing, and this is a cautionary tale for those of you who are getting work done. My wife and I both work, and it just so happens because of the storms, did some damage out at the base that really required 100% focus. I didn't have any actual flexible time to just kind of, hey, I need to step out for half hour to go check on contractors or whatever. It just was intense. So I left the workers for the most part unsupervised, which is not normally a good idea, but one company we've dealt with before, and I kind of trust them. And the folks that were doing the work, that working for the work who worked with the contractor we were working with, the senior contractor, we trusted it as well. We had no reason not to. But what I did was I set up a laptop, okay, with a webcam that looked into the kitchen, not so much to spy on, because it was obvious that the camera was there, but we wanted to see the progress. And plus, the cool thing about doing that is, I can remote in. I've got software set up. To allow me to remote into all of our computers, as well as some computers at church, to remote control them, to do things on them that I might need to. And in this case, remoting into the laptop, I could observe how the progress was coming along to see if they were on time, or if I was going to have to anticipate some delays or rearranging of schedules or something. And just kind of cool to see, like watching a DIY show, a do-it-yourself show on cable or satellite. You see the progress. You see it's like, coming from the before and the after. And you can have the camera app, take snapshots as you go. So you have those kind of options. And so that was the primary reason. It's just it's also convenient that since I couldn't be there all the time they were working, I could at least see if, make sure things were going okay. Now, obviously, I can't see the whole house. But also, we have an alarm system on our house. So if they left or needed to leave, all they'd do is text me and say, hey, we need to leave. And then they could leave the door unlocked so they could get back in. And all I would have to do is just set the alarm system. So the house is protected. And then all they have to do is just let me know, hey, we're coming back in. I unlock the system and they go in and continue work. Well, as it turns out, the folks, one of the guys who was working on the countertops, he started playing with the computer, because the remote software I have you can tell if they're doing something. So he was over there trying to do stuff with the computer. So I was literally battling for control of the machine. So I gave it a day to kind of chill out, because I was kind of upset. They shouldn't have been messing with anything other than doing the work they were hired to do. So I waited a day, so I cooled down a little bit, and we went to go see the company and explained to him, saying, we're just, first, you always tell them the good things first. He said, we are absolutely happy with the work they did with the granite countertops. They were awesome. It looks great. Especially given the challenges they had dealing with the fact that the walls were messed up from the previous owner. But having said that, at least one of the guys was messing with a computer and shouldn't have been. And of course, they were very, very apologetic. I said, don't make it into a bigger deal than it needs to be, but let them know this is not the kind of thing they need to be doing when they're working on somebody's house. If somebody's trusting them to, if somebody is trusting workers enough to leave them unsupervised working on their house, they need to be trustworthy, which means they don't go doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. Character and integrity is simply doing the right thing when nobody's looking. And this, we found that this wasn't necessarily the case. So be aware. I will be. I tell you, it makes a case for actually having a camera system in your house. So. Thinking strongly about that. It was easy enough to set up this kind of system to observe and be remoted into, but strongly considering an actual full-blown camera system in the house. So just be aware that that might be a thing for consideration if you have work done in your house. We have had, as I mentioned earlier, we've had insane amounts of rain. It has been rain. We've had huge storms for the past 4 weeks. And talk about saturated. We have flash flooding left and right around here. There are dry streams and riverbeds that are now flowing. And even again, this morning we had a huge storm. I was driving around to pick up some supplies for a Pet's Wish, the local pet rescue here, because they were almost out of supplies. And driving through the town, I got a chance because it finally let up and we saw some sunshine. And it still looks clear. Got to see some of the storm damage from just the storm this morning. I mean, I saw some trees completely uprooted, three blocks down from us. They had to get a buzzsaw out and chop up a tree that had collapsed that had blown over onto their fence. I mean, it's just crazy. But if you've been watching the news at all, you probably saw last week we had a big storm that spawned a tornado in our area, and actually the tornado went into Mexico and hit Acuna, our sister city. I mean, literally, it's just, we live by the airport. We are a mile away from the border right here at our house. And so you just cross right across the river and you've got Acuna, because it's actually a much bigger city than Del Rio. And it really did some huge damage over there. Hundreds of, like 800 or 900 homes damaged. Somewhere around 20 people confound. 13, I think 13 was the last number, but I think they may be dealing with some other people who were missing. Let me show you some pictures. I mean, this is crazy. This is what it did. I mean, it almost looks like this was a joke if you didn't know how serious and tragic this was, that all these cars were blown this way. Just incredible. And these houses are not built very well to begin with. And you see it, just utter devastation. Just incredible. And so, our church and, many people in our area have been donating money and supplies and working with the city of Del Rio to get supplies and aid over there. Our church is affiliated with a children's home, a foster home, not a foster home, orphanage over there. And they ended up with a lot of children basically being brought to them because of the damage you see. And, the parents are able to kind of fend for themselves, but they can't take care of their children while they're trying to recover. So these children being brought to the orphanages temporarily, so they have some sort of room and shelter while the parents try to recover. So obviously your prayers and donations, if you can, for the various agencies trying to help over there are coveted. So, but it's just been crazy. I've just had enough of this rain. This morning coming down again, and as bad as the storm is, and I know that does not help, that can't possibly help recovery efforts over there. And it certainly creates more damage even here, so that the folks who would normally provide help over to our sister city Acuna, you kind of have to take care of your own first. It's kind of like the Kind of like the flight attendants tell you in an aircraft. You know, if we have a sudden loss of cabin pressure, and you'll see the oxygen mask drop down, put yours on first and then assist those around you. Well, when you have the kind of damage that seems to be frequently happening now, and it starts damaging homes here and creating havoc here, it reduces our ability to be generous overseas. It doesn't make it impossible. It just makes it harder, because any money or supplies you were maybe going to allocate for assistance, you now have to use in your own home to take care of recovery efforts here. So yeah, just seeing trees uprooted with this last storm, and so I went out to the lake. So I say that I went out to the lake with all the rain we've had, and I haven't been out there for like 3 weeks. I went out to the lake expecting to see the lake up. I was estimating about 5 feet because of all the rain we've been getting up in the northwest of us, feeding into the Devil's River, the Pecos, and the Rio Grande. I thought the lake's got to be up. But much to my surprise, no. The lake is actually down a little bit. And I've got some pictures here, I hope. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. That's weird. It's like it's zoomed in. I didn't zoom in that picture. There we go. So the last time I was out there, the water was right up to the edge of the walk here. See if I can change next. And normally the normal level for this lake is up where these are what you're looking at is what we call the cliffs at Diablo East. If you start from the lake level and the point, and you come up along there and you see that first upcropping, that's usually where the water is. That's normal, the normal water level. And then over around the corner there, it kind of has somewhat of a sheer drop, but not quite sheer. And that's where kids jump off. So we're still way down. But it actually has gone, the lake level has actually gone lower. Hello. Where's the next one? I'm missing that's weird. It's like one of my pictures isn't showing. See if I can get it to show. It's weird. There we go. See, the water was right up to that. So now it's actually further down, which means the dive chest is probably now at about 6 feet or 7 feet of water. So I'm really disappointed. I have it in my mind to maybe contact the Water Boundary Commission to find out what's been going on. I mean, because this would mean with all the water we've been getting into the lake from the three rivers, this would mean that they must be letting a lot more water out. Which I don't understand if that's the case, because it's not like the farmers, they control the outlet of the water basically to help the irrigation farming downstream. Okay. We've had so much rain in West Texas. They surely cannot need the water downstream. So why aren't they letting the lake fill up to its normal conservation level? I don't get this. We should have been up 5 feet by now, given how much rain that we've been getting. I mean, it's just crazy the amounts of water that we've been getting. So that's what Lake Amistad looks like right now. And the visibility, as you might expect, is absolutely horrible. It's hard to tell from that picture, but you basically can see a foot down, and that's about it. It's just all a silty nastiness. It's just really bad. I would probably still get in the water. I was supposed to have a class this weekend. Fortunately, my student backed out for basically postponed to the end of June class because the temperatures have not been very hot. And so the lake has not warmed up as quickly as it normally would. Global warming, ha ha ha. And plus the weather being the way it is, we wouldn't have been able to do the class. It would have been washed out. So it was fortunate that she said, let's wait till June. I'm hoping that the weather stabilizes by then and it actually heats up. We need to have some serious 100-degree weather, dry days to get the lake temperatures up. The last dive I did was about 3 weeks ago with John Bevan, one of our viewers. That was some cold water, and I was in my 5 mil full, and that was a bit chilly. You get down below the thermal, which was about 25 feet, and it drops pretty good. It's down in the 60s. So we're hoping that the weather warms up and dries up. I'll be honest with you. If I don't see any more rain the rest of the year, I will not be unhappy. I know some farmers probably will be unhappy. Some other people will be unhappy, but they should have just let the lake come up and then would have plenty of water for the rest of the year. So that's the way things look right now. So if you're coming to dive in Del Rio, you better be ready for some horrible visibility and make sure you're wearing at least a 5 mil full. Otherwise, you're going to be a chilly diver. Let's see. Oh, we'll real quick rant on that. The neighbors who live behind me, and I've seen this in a couple of other houses too, I am so disgusted with. In the middle of all these heavy storms, they've got dogs outside with no protection, with all the lightning going on and torrential rain and wind, and their dog is just sitting out there in the middle of all this. I took pictures and video. These are the kind of people that I believe need to be arrested. This is abuse. If you've got a pet that's normally outside, when you have weather like this, you darn well better have some sort of protection for them that's up off the ground. You've got to realize that areas can flood very quickly, and that you can, at the very least, your dog can get sick or they can drown. And I have no problem turning people in who neglect their animals that way. Think about it. If you own a pet, you need to take proper precautions to take care of that animal. They rely on you. They rely on you. They are domesticated. If you don't give them shelter, they're not going to make it themselves. So think about that. If you've got a bad storm coming in and you've got an animal outside, take proper precautions. You do not want somebody like me to get on your case. So that's the end of my rant for that. Okay, so as we go into the diving season, people are looking at travel. Unfortunately, we're not, because we spend all our money on the kitchen. But for those who are actually going to get to go somewhere cool on a vacation trip, here's some things that you might want to think about. Here's some things that you might want to think about as you get ready for that, especially if it's international travel. That's a big thing. 2 months prior, ensure your passport is current. Some countries won't allow entry into their country unless your passport will be valid for 6 months after entry. Not sure why it's that long, but you need to find out if that's the case. So basically, look at your passport and see when it's going to expire. If it's going to expire within 6 months of your entry into a foreign country, you may want to go ahead and get it renewed, or plan your trip to a different location that doesn't have that requirement. And this is 2 months prior. Determine if you need a tourist visa. You can go to travel.state.gov. That's travel.state.gov to find specific info for the country that you're going to. Interestingly, some countries you can have a passport. You need a passport, but you also need a tourist visa to go there. So go to travel.state.gov, basically it's the State Department, and find out what's necessary for the country. And typically you can do all that stuff online, which is pretty cool. Technology rules. Decide if you want to go with a global entry permit. Department of Homeland Security will allow expedited security process for you if you're willing to submit to an extensive background check, background investigation, and an interview process. Basically, you got to see if they can put you on a trusted list. Cost you $100 to do that for that pain, and about 4 to 6 weeks to make it happen. So that's something to consider. When you get 1 month out from your trip, see if you need any vaccinations. Go to www.cdc.gov to find out, determine if you need any vaccinations and how far. Because different countries may either have vaccination requirements for you going in, or they may have some conditions that you need to be vaccinated against so that you're okay coming back into the United States. When Tara and I were on tour with Tops and Blue, there were a lot of vaccinations that we had to get prior to going on tour, because we were going to be literally traveling all over the world. So we had to make sure that we had all these different vaccinations. So our book was pretty full of shots and things that we had taken going out, and then they had to check it when we were coming back in. So make sure you check on that. Again, that's cdc.gov. Acquire local currency. Work with your bank to get a good exchange rate. Don't use the exchange booths in those countries, because they'll scalp you. So work with your bank, find out, get the best exchange rate you can, and then have the local currency. Also, see if your bank can get you better fees for ATMs in the destination country, because some of those fees for extra national ATMs to pull money from accounts that are outside their country, some of those fees can be exorbitant. So see if you can get a deal. Work with your bank to see if you can get a better deal on those fees. So it's definitely preferable to use ATMs, not currency exchange booths. So get currency exchanged here going into the country, and then use ATMs. And I got to say, we found that convenient when we went to Belize last year. They had ATMs, and it was definitely, matter of fact, you'll find in some places touristy, they may only accept cash. They may not accept a credit or debit card. We ran into that, so being able to go to an ATM was definitely a good thing. So, and then inform your credit card companies that you're going to another country. If you are cognizant, if you are sensitive to the potential for identity theft or other fraud against you, you probably have your bank, if they don't already have that. And excuse me a moment while I kill a spider. That was kind of interesting. It was dangling from the ceiling. Live on air, I killed a spider. So a lot of banks will stop your card from working if you use it out of the country. Now, obviously, if you are a frequent traveler, they're probably used to that. But if you are like us and you only do this once a year at best, then letting your credit card company know, hey, we're getting ready to go to Belize. Okay. So if you see purchases made or debits made against our card in Belize, it's more than likely us, unless we report the card stolen. If you see stuff being bought in England or Grand Cayman or Curacao, that's not us, and so that be alerted to fraud. So let your credit card companies know. Let your bank know that you're going to be doing this. Also, if you're going to be doing ATMs, let your bank know. Let's see. 2 weeks prior, prepare all your documents. Get 2 photocopies of your passport and your visa, your driver's license, your credit cards, and your itinerary, your travel itinerary, and lodging confirmation. Leave 1 set with friends or relatives. So they're back here. You're back in the States or wherever your home is. And then you have another set that you keep tucked away in a different location of your luggage or whatever from where your actual originals are. So you have some way to prove your identity and where you're supposed to be. If something happens and all of your original documents are lost or stolen, okay? So keep one set at home, keep another set bundled up in a place in a piece of luggage or something that's not where you have your originals. Set up a global calling plan. If you're bringing your phone, set up a global calling plan so that you can it will save you money in the long run, allowing you to make phone calls back home to check on family or your kids, your house, or anything that or your job, whatever you need to check on. As well as if you run into trouble, you need to be able to call folks to let them know, hey, we've run into some difficulty. So set up a global calling plan, and ensure your Dan Divers Alert Network membership is up to date. Bring your membership card, which contains all the important numbers that you need. We use Dan. We love Dan. We've never had to actually rely on their services other than the stuff that you can just review, like statistics and helpful hints and guides and things like that. But we've never had an accident where we needed to rely on their insurance or their help. But I tell you, it's a wonderful peace of mind knowing that we can if we need to. So those are just some helpful hints if you're getting ready for international travel. And got somebody in the chat room make comments. Huh. Interesting. Poor John got kicked out of the system and just got back in. So, well, you'll be able to watch it on YouTube afterward, John. So, all right. Let's see. Other interesting information. There's a new DAN-affiliated, Divers Alert Network affiliated study of flying after diving. Now, for those who are divers, you know that the basic rule is if you do a dive, you don't fly any quicker than 12 hours after the dive. If you do multiple dives over multiple days, then it's an 18-hour as a minimum. The convention is 24 hours. If you happen to be an Air Force pilot, they actually have a rule that you can't fly any sooner than 24 hours after you've been diving, because they realize that some of their pilots are divers, and a lot of my students happen to be pilots. However, and you'll notice that most of your dive computers automatically go into a 24-hour fly countdown when you stop diving. When it detects that you're not diving anymore, it starts counting down from 24 hours so that it kind of keeps you honest. So you'll know, hey, once it gets to zero and it goes back to normal mode, you're cleared to fly. So a DAN-affiliated group did a pretty intense study involving where they literally did the sonogram, the echocardiographic post-dive monitoring for gas bubbles in venous blood, or VGE, looking for venous gas embolisms. It was back in March. So they basically tracked some divers, 56 divers, and then they went on the plane with them flying to see exactly what was going on with their bodies after flying. They were doing an average of, during a week, they were doing an average of 13 dives, and then they went flying. Okay, so they were monitored 30, 60, and 90 minutes after surfacing to get a baseline. In other words, to see what kind of bubbles were being generated by the divers right after diving. So within 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, they wanted to see what was going on in their system, so they know, okay, where were you at the end of the dive, basically. 23 of the divers, this is after these time frames, 23 divers almost never developed bubbles. That's interesting. 17 divers occasionally did, and then 16 divers consistently developed bubbles after the dives. The average dive was, these were saltwater dives, 99 feet for 49 minutes. So it's you're gonna have to do a safety stop for sure. 24 hours prior to takeoff, no divers exhibited bubbles. Okay, so in other words, they waited long enough so that 24 hours before takeoff, nobody had bubbles in their system. Now that means that they have equalized to sea level, okay, or whatever level that the land was. Okay, so that means that they stayed out long enough that any off-gassing had reached equilibrium with the altitude they were at, typically sea level if you've ever been diving. So so then after takeoff, 8 subjects from the consistent bubble group, in other words, the 16 divers who always got showed bubbles 30, 60, 90 minutes after a dive, 8 of them, half of them, developed bubbles again, and none from the other 2 groups. So that tells you that there is a body type, I guess. There are some people who are predisposed to developing bubbles regardless. Must be very, very slow off-gassers, I guess. The takeaways from this study are that even after 24 hours, bubbles can develop, and that Patty's 18-hour a minute minimum rule after multiple dives, multiple days, may need to be revised. So if you're, and I don't know what the other agencies have, but so it may mean that the 12-hour rule is cool. Okay, 1 dive seems to be fine. But if you're an intense diver, like if you go on a trip like Tara and I do, and you do multiple dives across multiple days, we always wait 24 hours anyway. That's just, I rather go on the conservative side. I'd rather follow my computer anyway. So we always wait 24 hours. But this says even after 24 hours, you could develop bubbles, especially if you have a predisposition to doing that. So it's a good idea to think about, even though the training may say 18 hours after multiple dives across multiple days, you may want to go ahead and just stick with the 24-hour rule all the time. So those are some recommendations based on a recent study. So this is going to lead them to do, I'm sure, more intense studies. Okay, so one of the things as we're moving along here, one of the things that we kind of been promising you was some highlights from the Upstagers 2015 revision of Soup du Jour, a show that we world premiered back in '97, and John was just saying it's good to get an international collect phone number on credit cards. Most countries you can't call a 1-800 number. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So that's another bit of information then. Get an international collect phone number on credit cards, because most countries you can't call a 1-800 number. I did not know that. Thanks for that, John. A little bit of more information for you. Anyway, we had a 2015 revival of Soup du Jour, and so we had a person who was also running lights videotape the show, and so I can't show you the entire production, obviously, as part of this show, but I do have some highlights, musical highlights from the show, so I'd like to share that with you all and provide maybe a little bit of commentary. All right, here we go.
Catherine House, the foreign correspondent.
That is my wife, Tara.
Catherine House from the London desk. It has a lovely ring to it. If I could sing, I'd sing to it.
She got to reprise her role as Catherine Hawks from the original.
Catherine House, the foreign correspondent. Girl from the wrong side of the pond makes good. And if London Bridge is falling down, Jack the Ripper's back in town. If the blackguard harms the crown, who will get the names and dates back to the United States?
By that double deal of story stealing, tantalizing, traumatizing, victimizing, vilifying, glorifying, horrifying, vandalizing,
that's Tom Faison, one of our new upstagers.
By the star, by the star. I want you to burrow through and get that recipe. We're in a situation we can't afford to wait. We need the confiscation of that secret concentrate. The maitre d' has the recipe, but the contents he won't say. So I've got a plan to get that man to spill that consomme. You'll need finesse, you'll need panache, you'll need chutzpah, but by gosh, don't bring me back an empty plate. Get the soup and I will kiss you cake.
You might recognize this guy.
Up in the attic, only dust. Down in the bathroom, lots of rust. And a pipeline must adjust. But in the meantime, let it bust. Dying on you, that was bad enough. So can you finally be dad enough to tell me how does the recipe vanish into thin air? Who, what, and why you can spare? Tell me
You must be patient.
I'll come back later. But Mr. Chaplain, don't be a great dictator. There's no need to worry, we won't give you the brush. So try to watch your hurry, watch your baby go rush. You may have fortune and fame, but baby, what's in the name? You could be Shakespeare singing Freud to burn. So be a bit forgiving, we were living to earn. Hey, Mr. Chaplain, wait your turn.
I have to say that this is still one of my favorite sets, and it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun recreating this based on the original. The show is set in the time of Charlie Chaplin, obviously. Now, you wouldn't think that you get tired on something simple like this, but we were quite winded at the end of this song.
Just we don't need to be cold. You may be boss of the soul, but your celebrity is not a concern. Oh yes, we're so excited that you happened our way. Simply too delighted and we want you to stay. Don't you understand we got a little delay?
Hey, Mr. Chaplain, what can we do for you, Chaplain?
Build up a shoe for you,
Chaplain,
wait your. Hey, Mr. Chaplain,
Scott Van Landingham was always fun to work with on stage.
Oh, Stuart, you've made me the happiest woman in the world.
And Hannah Spencer, one of our younger upstagers. It's fun working with her in this role. This is probably one of the bigger roles that she's had.
And now my maitre d' is staring me. I've got the knuckles, plain about blue. I've got the gown and the veil. I've got the town by the tent. Keeps the nursery run from never
I choreographed the show.
Tomorrow down that aisle, along with my
Try to keep it fairly easy.
Twinkle, twinkle, diamond ring. I deserve, well, everything. But the only thing I want is my name attached to a restaurant. So if the pamphlet inside, the line begins on the right. Congratulate me and be sure to keep you. If I seem overcome,
It's funny to see what different moves might be challenging for different performers.
Tiffany, darling, in honor of your impending nuptials and to christen our newfound friendship, I
I think they'll have soup. Just bring me a bowl of that taste.
That's Courtney Jones. She's on our praise team. She's also the current Miss Del Rio.
It is the magic success until the most famous critic gives it a yes. Soup will be delighted to make you a soup, Mr. Coco. And will you be ordering anything else this evening? Don't bring me pheasants on a glass. Don't bring me tea with sassafras. Don't give the caviar on pass, but honey, don't forget I want soup. You'll get the soup. I want to be losing control and decompression myself. So hurry up, Mr. Waiter, fill up my bowl. One bowl of Bailey soup du jour coming right up. Hurry up, Mr. Waiter, then show me your soul. Hurry up and fill up my bowl. So, DeCoco's ordering the soup du jour.
Well, I hope he makes it for her.
He has to, doesn't he know who Shelly DeCoco is?
You have to make the soup du jour.
What are you talking about?
Coco's ordering the soup du jour.
I'll take care of Mr. Coco.
I know what you're going to say, sir, but nobody says no to Shelly DeCoco. It's just...
No, we can't serve it tonight.
Mr. Waiter, do me up right.
John was just saying that he thinks that it's great and wish they could have made it. I wish he could have too. I think he would have
Good
enjoyed the
evening,
show.
Mr. Coco.
Oh, Mr. Bailey, I've heard about your father. My condolences. I understand you had quite a turnout at the funeral.
Perhaps you also heard we are not serving
Maybe Schumacher.
The challenge of this particular number is that there's so many entrance and exits that if you have a live band, they can vamp while you do your lines.
Somebody tell me, is there a full moon in the sky?
Mr. Waiter, don't leave me dry.
Sure handle that, Stuart.
Maybe you should just make the soup.
That's out of the question.
Well, I know you're doing this for your father, but I don't think he'd want you to lose the
I
restaurant.
had to devise a way to can the music because I played all
Just bring her the
this.
soup.
I can't do that.
Just bring her a bowl of that thing.
Everybody knew when they could come in and come out, or how long they had to say their lines before singing
You
continued.
want to show her who's boss? Come on, Mr. Bailey, spill it. Where is the sauce? Give it up, 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 give it up.
Serve her the salmon almazine, give her the chicken Florentine, but stay away from that tureen or I must intervene.
She ordered the soup. She doesn't want to lay on two. She said no chocolate too. Come on, Mr. Bailey, now's the time to produce. Give it out, 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 give it out.
Now, this was a song that I wrote for this show.
It's a matter of taste. It's a matter of style. Just a simple morsel can beat a public demand. If you got the best flair and you know what to sell, just let Jelly do the talking. They'll be eating out of your hand. You see, I've made a living out of giving people the food. Darling, take it from me, it's a matter of taste. Now you might think my Acuna would empty me of journalistic will, but I suppose that my dictum grows in the pink and potpourri, and my technique is so trashy, I even own if it needs a precise to man the creme de la creme, improvisational drama will serve you up some success. Just a dash of mystique and a whole lot of class. If you wanna repeat
the show originally, there was only a duet that involved the character of Shelley DeCoco that Courtney was seen playing there. And I remember, because I actually get royalties for the music for the show because I did some things with the arrangements that weren't in the original. I actually wrote the overture for the show. So I actually get royalties from it. And one of the things I had talked to the musical author, Greg Opalka, was that I thought, that Shelley's character needed a song. Because they didn't really anticipate when they wrote the show that her character would be as kind of show-stopping or scene-stealing as it turned out to be when we originally did it. And, of course, here we are 17 years later, and I finally had the opportunity to do it, so I went ahead and wrote the song. So I'm going to be sending that into the authors and see if they want to actually include it in the show.
If it's on the menu, then you better order a la carte. Learn how to choose.
I gotta say, I'm married to a very talented woman.
Just write the news and catch your plane. Don't fall in love.
One night, what a ride on the eve of my wedding. Forgetting there's a bride. How insensitive. This is not what I wanted to find. Wake up just to learn I've been blind. But now it's one special name, one lovely voice, one certain face, no other choice, no running scared, no changing track, no turning back. How great! I'm in love with Kate. Who knew? It's strange how you convince yourself of things that are not true, when all along the truth is standing right in front of you like this waitress. This girl I barely met, this waitress that I cannot forget. When she walked right through that door and did something to my heart, what seemed permanent before now seems distant and apart, which is fine, I don't mind, I can cope if there's. How great! I'm in love with Kate! How horribly mine! There's no better way to begin the day than with scandal.
One of my favorite songs in the show.
If you like a show of impropriety, we put out the low in high society. Whatever sort of mom's gonna make you feel as gay. There's no better life than the pain and strife of a failure. We can break a bank or make the senator pay.
Chase those darling and be passionate.
Just be sure there's love's attraction, and that scandal makes a lovely day.
He thought I was kidding when I told him he needed to do that.
Ah, yes.
I dream of nothing better.
Than a tasty little morsel of dust.
Don't talk about taste, darling.
Well,
Oh.
sorry, Sherry.
You know, Miss Fox, I may make a lousy slow gent this, but I'm a pretty good judge of character. I like this girl. I like it so much I can't believe she doesn't exist. Look behind the face, see the face behind. Could it be you don't reveal? Someone just as real, as rich of that, as warm a smile, as you live in her place. Stop someday and ask, who's behind the mask? What's the thing that makes her have to cry?
It's fun getting to see somebody who's normally known for comedic roles, as Scott here is, getting a chance to see him move move into a little bit of a dramatic role and sing a serious song. It's not something he gets to do, and so this was kind of his first time. And he did a wonderful job being able to pull off that song.
What did Adam get with Eve? Had a lovely place you can't conceive. Splendid view and private too, which he had to leave. Oh, that's what women get ya. That's what women get ya.
Oedipus, the ancient Greek, had a slight maternalistic streak. Rex found sex just too complex, turned into a freak. That's the way to get ya. That is the way to get ya.
Paris was a handsome boy. Hell said to him, come be my boy. It's a property, not a house, by my ancient joy.
That's the way to get ya. That's the way to get ya. They're either silent or a constant babbler. They're either olive oil or else they're head dabbler. I'd like to thank you all for coming, but now would you just mind leaving? There's no reason to be staying. There are no vows that we'll be saying, not today and not tomorrow. So sorry, Tiffany, it wasn't meant to be. It was never in the stars, some couple's futures there, not ours. I never meant to cause a spattle or make your makeup smear like that, but so it goes. And so it's over. Cheer up, it's not so black. They'll take your trousseau back. The woman I adore is here no more. She left without a trace. So my darling bride to be,
Then finally getting to sing a duet with my
would
wife.
you drink a toast with me?
To life's sweet buzz,
Here's looking at us.
each tomorrow we'll see.
Every day is like mine, every day a dance.
May tears keep you as the years advance.
Every gift a star, every word a song. And what a wonderful our whole life long.
And so that is that are some musical highlights from our revised version, our revival 2015 revival of Soup du Jour. Had a lot of fun with it. Now, so we're gearing up now with this slight break, actually a longer break than normal for shows. We normally do four shows a year. The upstagers do. We don't personally do 4 shows a year. Excuse me. So we're getting ready for the big summer musical. So looking forward to that. So matter of fact, let's hit some administrivia as we tag things out here. So our next Dive Club meeting is 18 June at 7 p.m. at Rudy's Restaurant. I tell you, Rudy's sounds really good right now. I've had new dinner and not much to say to speak of for lunch, as a matter of fact. Dive classes, we got our June class. It's filling up quickly. I've already got 4 people in it. Patty lets me, without a certified assistant, teach up to 8 people, if conditions allow. And here at Lake Amistad, I like to keep it down to 6. That's really the most that I can comfortably manage given the conditions here. So we're up to 4 students right now. So, and starting to run out of time to sign up. Need to sign up no later than the first week of the month of the class. So 25th through 28th of June, and then July 23rd through the 26th, August 27th through the 30th, September 24th through the 28th. And if you'd like more information about the cost of the classes and how it all is put together, I have some downloads, some documents you can download to help you out with that. Just go to our website. Go to delriodiveclub.com. And then also you can follow us on Facebook, Del Rio. Just look for Del Rio Dive Club. Or you can send us a message via Skype. Just look for TGW2D. Now, as I mentioned, we've got our big summer musical coming up. So we're holding auditions for Into the Woods, which was actually Disney made a movie version of it back in Christmas time. It was pretty good. I'd give it an 8. I was surprised by some of the performances, but they changed a number of things, left a lot of stuff out. So I was disappointed about that. But so we're doing the full stage play. And so we have auditions 14th of June at 2 p.m. And also, that's a Sunday. And then 15th of June at 7 p.m. Those are both at the Firehouse. And if you're a Del Rio local, you'll know what that place is. So, again, you can always go to the Upstagers Facebook page and their website, upstagers.org, to get information on that if you like. If you are brave enough to try to get some diving in here at Lake Amistad, you can get your airfills at Broke Mill RV Park out on Highway 90 West. Looks like they've just about got the extension of the loop going across Highway 90 into the new estates that are being built out there. So anyway, you can give Mike McCarson a call, 830-719-2935, to let him know you're coming so he can make sure the system's fired up to fill your tanks. And as always, the Pets Wish needs donations. They've got they're running just a few animals right now. They're trying to work out a place to be because they can't stay in the place that they're at. But they have, what's not helping the situation is they have so many vet bills from all the poor animals that are brought into them. And so if you can donate to help defray the cost of the vet bills, as well as the food and medicines and cleaning supplies, etc., that they need for the few animals that they still have, they're still taking care of, please check them out. They're on Facebook. And if you would like to contact me, you can send me an email at robert.wade@cetifox.net. It's right here below. Or you can follow me on Twitter. I'm very prolific on Twitter and LinkedIn and some other things. But on Twitter, just look for Robert CFP, and you follow me, and I'll follow you. It's that simple. We really enjoy having you watch the show, John. Thank you for being with us. And adding your valuable information about traveling, about getting a international collect number for a credit card. That's pretty handy. I'll have to add that to my list of things to do when we go on our trip, hopefully next year. Now that we got the renovations done, definitely going to be looking for a big trip for next year. Haven't even begun to decide where we want to go for next year, but. So I'm open to suggestions if it's a place that we haven't been before. So I think that pretty much finishes us up for this week. I've got to get some dinner in my belly because I haven't had any dinner and I'm hungry. So you all have a great evening. If you're in Texas, just watch out for the weather. We just got more storms coming left and right. It's craziness. And if you don't happen to be going to church in the morning, I would like to recommend that you probably think about doing that. Find a friend of yours that's going and just step in. You might be surprised and find it someplace that you want to be. All right, so we hopefully, barring any unforeseen circumstances, we will see you next week on another exciting episode of Two Guys Who Dive. See ya.